Welcome, welcome, Paralympic fans. It is day 3 here in Beijing at the Paralympic Winter Games. We are back at the ice cube. You can see it's a lovely sunny day outside, but inside we want it nice and cold. We have converted the National Aquatic Centre, as this building is normally, we have converted it into the ice cube for the duration of these Paralympic Winter Games. And we are well underway here in the round robin of the wheelchair curling event at the Paralympic Winter Games in Beijing. It is day 3, we're in session 7, and we have a matchup of 2 of the strongest nations from the Pacific region. We're going to be watching Korea versus China. Here we are, the Republic of Korea and China, both of them on 1 win and 2 losses. These teams know each other very well from Asia Pacific Championships, so this will be a tasty one.
Let's give a round of applause to this session's competing team.
Welcoming the teams to the game with the traditional Scottish pipers, curling of course coming from Scotland.
On sheet A, Norway versus Estonia.
There are our 2 teams. Let's say hi to them. So the lead for China, that is Yeon Jo. Second thrower for China,
Republic of Korea
Jang Mingliang
versus People's Republic of China.
Third thrower for China is Chen Yanxin. He's also the vice skip. And fourth hand skip for China, the familiar figure of Wang Haitao. And for Korea, lead thrower and flag bearer for the Korean team, Baek Haejin.
Games will begin shortly.
Second thrower for Korea, Jung Sung-hun. Third thrower for Korea, Jang Jae-hyuk. Fourth and skip for Korea, Go Seung-nam. These teams know each other very well. They both qualify from the Asia Pacific region. And in fact, they are the only 2 teams in this Paralympic cycle from the Asia-Pacific region, and we can see both of them really in the thick of it. Both of them on 1 win and 2 losses, still plenty of points out there. China, of course, they won the gold medal last time, but meanwhile, let's see how the teams have got here. Republic of Korea, you can see them getting better and better there, and culminating in a previous session with a win over mighty Norway, who have medalled and been high in the table several times in wheelchair curling. So the Korean team coming into good form at exactly the right time. And Chinese team had a couple of tough games to start with, Canada and Sweden, 2 of the also very strong teams in this competition, and getting their winning streak underway with a win over Estonia. The teams wishing each other good curling. Both teams decorating their wheels with their nation's flags. And it was Korea who were successful with their last stone draw. And that means it is China who will start us off with the first stone in this round robin session. Watching Korea versus China. Korea, they will be wearing the Korea throwing red stones, sorry, and China will be throwing yellow.
8号哥。
Yeonjo leading us off. Always fun watching the Chinese team. They really roar the store down the ice, just like non-wheelie players. Very expressive team. They're encouraging the stone to put its brakes on a bit. Doesn't quite hang on there. Yuan, sorry, she will make the adjustment for next stone. Korea and China, plenty of experience in previous Paralympic Winter Games. Actually, the only athletes out there who have represented before, that is Wang Haitao and Chen Yanxin. They are the two who were part of the team who won gold at the previous Paralympics. They're not quite in that sort of form just yet in the competition, but a long way to go still. And definitely they'll be wanting to come into form towards the end of the week rather than at the beginning. And Wang Haitao, a fine servant of Chinese curling, and he also represented China in the Paralympic Winter Games in 2014, where they finished 4th on their Paralympic debut. So China doing pretty nicely with their representation here in wheelchair curling at Paralympics, and that's a better effort from Yuan. She making that correction and finding really nice weight. When we talk about the weight of the stone, that's how far the stone will travel. A heavy stone will travel further than a light stone. In German-speaking countries, you talk about the length of the stone, so a stone will travel a long way or a short way. So that was a heavier stone there that wanted to remove that Chinese stone, and Baek Haijin just removing that danger. That's good to get those first couple of stones underway. That settles the nerves a bit, getting 2 good stones there in the first end. Baek Haijin from Korea, she was the flag bearer for the Korean team at the opening ceremony at these Paralympic Winter Games here in Beijing. This looks good again from China. Very nice first throw from second thrower Zhang Wenliang. And that's very close to the T line. The T line is the horizontal line across the circles. You can see it just behind that yellow stone. That's the T line. And when you hear curlers talking about T weight, they mean a stone that will travel as far, pretty much as the T line. So it looks like the Chinese first and second throwers, they've started out well finding that weight. First throw of the game for second thrower from Korea, Jung Sung-hong. Again, that's more like a supposed to take out that Chinese stone. He had a good weight. That was the correct weight for removing that stone, but it looks like that stone curled a bit more than they expected. So that's a good chance to already talk about one of the important differences between wheelchair curling and non. One of the first things you notice really about wheelchair curling is that there are no sweepers. And maybe if you remember watching curling before at Olympics, or maybe if you're explaining it to your colleagues or your friends, Chinese team lowering the stone down the ice. Oh, and it didn't quite work for them. The stone just dropping short. But not for lack of encouragement. But if you're talking with colleagues, or maybe you watched curling before at the Olympics, and often that's the first thing people think of when we're talking about curling. They say, yes, that's on the ice with all the brushing, isn't it? And typically,
범퍼랑 비슷하게 잡았다고.
certainly in the non-wheelchair game, yes it is. But the first and most obvious difference if we're watching wheelchair curling is that there is no sweeping. And of course, sweeping does a few things. It firstly keeps the ice clean. That's the original purpose and still one of the purposes, although this ice here is already very clean, so that typically doesn't come into it very often. But if you were maybe watching the men's and ladies disciplines in the Olympics a few weeks ago, or you've seen it before, you maybe know that sweeping does two things primarily. It can drag the stone on a little further, so if you haven't quite thrown it hard enough and you get your sweepers on it, they can pull the stone a little further. They can keep the stone moving along its path, and they can also try to affect the direction. So if you sweep in a particular direction, you can try to encourage the stone to stay a bit straighter, to not curl so much. And if the stone already caught a bit of a curl, you can try to sweep to encourage it to curl more in that direction. So that all not taking place in the wheelchair game, and that really raises the degree of difficulty for all stones in wheelchair curling.
사이드 가드가 너무 좋은데 서드부터 들어와야 되는데.
So as soon as that stone is away now, nobody will be able to sweep it, and you have to find that angle just perfectly.
8, 4.
So that's nice from Jang Jae-hyuk.
잘 나가나 봐. 먼저 들어오긴 했었는데.
We quite often see that in the first end. We see quite conservative tactics. Neither team really wanting to have too many stones in play in this first end. That's quite common to have conservative tactics in the first end. Keep it fairly defensive. Don't maybe have too many stones in play so that you don't lose a big end by mistake already in the first end, just while the teams get a feel for the ice and feel how the ice is running. So the ice won't change too much in the duration of a competition, but certainly from venue to venue and from session to session it can change. And that was a very successful lowering of the stone down the ice there. What a nice spot that Chinese stone has found. It's tucked in behind both of those guards. You can see they're in all beautifully in line now. Perfectly done without any sweeping. Really nice stuff from Chinese third, Chen Yanxin. So that puts a bit of pressure now on Korea. It's Korea who have last stone in this first end.
13초예요.
If you just look behind the players on the scoreboard there, underneath the little Korean flag, it says LSFE with a little red stone. That stands for last stone first end. And before the game, both teams have a 9-minute practice on this sheet. They take it in turns. You have a 9-minute practice. You can do whatever you want during that practice. And at the end of it, both the teams, they throw one stone in the clockwise curl, one stone in the anti-clockwise curl. And cumulatively, whichever team with their 2 stones is closer to the centre, they have the choice for last stone draw, or sorry, last stone in the first end. And technically, you may choose to not have last stone in the first end if you want. But that would be a nonsense. So if you win the last stone draw, then 100% of the time you will choose to have the last stone advantage in that first end. So that was Korea this time. They have the last stone in the first end in this game. But it's China who have made the brighter start here. China won't expect to score a point with that yellow that's in the rings just now, but it could become important later. First stone in the game for legend of Chinese curling, Wang Haitao. And well, That technique of rolling the stone down the ice is certainly working for them. He's got a second counter, sneaked in behind the guards there. There are two lovely stones from China towards the wings. Let's watch this again. That lovely curl again, just sneaking round the guard and buries itself. Very difficult for Korea to remove those stones. And those two stones putting a lot of pressure on Korea. China, they don't expect to score points with those stones. That less likely. But just having two Chinese stones in there, that puts pressure on fourth thrower and skip for Korea, Go Seong-nam. He needs to make sure he's accurate with his weight. He needs to make sure that his stone stops in just the right place, or those two little Chinese stones, they are waiting to pick up 2 points. But this looks a very nice first effort from Go Seong-nam. It is a good effort, but it runs out of beans just towards the end, and those two Chinese stones, they are still putting pressure on. One stone each to come then. One each for China and Korea. China in a nice position already here. Just wondering where's the best place to put the third Chinese counter in the rings. And you'll hear curling people calling it the house. You'll say, oh, let's put a stone in the house. And they simply mean the rings. I must admit my Chinese and my Korean language is nothing. So I don't know if it's the same in Chinese or Korean, if they also call it the house, but certainly in English-speaking countries, you will hear curlers talking about the house, and they mean the rings. Last stone for China in this first end. One stone to come for Korea. This looks very nice from Wang. That's a lovely shot. That is very good stuff from China, and the local crowd appreciating watching their home team. And even that stone there, which was beautifully done from Wang Haitao, China, they don't necessarily expect that to score them points in this end, but what it does is it puts pressure on Korea, and that's the objective for China in this first end. You can see 1, 2, 3 Chinese counters, all closest to the centre. So as it stands, China would score 3. So this has to be a really accurate shot here from Go Seong-nam. He not only has to remove the Chinese counter, but this red stone has to hang around as well. That stone doesn't quite curl enough. It removes one of the Chinese stones, but those two Chinese counters on the wings towards the edge of the sheet, that is going to be a big score of 2 in the first end for China. So after one end, China stealing 2 without last stone. China leads Korea 2 shots to 0. Strong start for defending gold medalists China. Even without last stone, they make a steal of 2 points, and they lead Korea 2 shots to 0 after one end. Yang Zhou starting us off in the second end.
没问题，没问题。
Go! 13秒8.
It was fun to hear the Chinese team encouraging the stone down the ice. And that's what everyone else does, so why not? And another strong start there from Yan Zhou. So what do Korea do about this then? They are 2 points behind, but they have last stone advantage still in this second end. China stole 2 points, that means they got points without having last stone. So Korea retained the last stone advantage in the second end, and this is a nice aggressive start from Korea, from Baek Haejin. Don't worry if you're a Korean fan. That maybe looks like a rubbish stone, but it isn't, it's the opposite. All of that white area in front of the rings, including where the red Korean stone is, all of that area is called the free guard zone. And stones in that free guard zone cannot be removed by the opposition. They can't be removed from play until we have thrown 5 stones total. So China not allowed to remove that Korean stone from play. This looks nice again from Yan Zhou. We would say she's found her weight beautifully. That means she's really got that nice front of house weight in her pocket. Very consistent. That's exactly what you're looking for with your lead player. And Chinese coach Yue Qingshang. She's got a lot of experience. She plays with the Chinese ladies team. And she was also the coach of this team when they won gold at the previous Paralympics in Pyeongchang, and they've also won 2 gold medals at World Championships, this Chinese team. Very up and coming. That could be a costly miss for Korea. That just overcurled. Yeah, a little shake of the head from Korean coach Kim Seong-min. Yeah, Baek Haejin looking a bit frustrated with that one. And a mistake early in this end for Korea. And because China had this end so nicely set up, then this could be a bit of work for Korea to wheel this end back in again. Encouraging that stone to put its brakes on, and it just hangs on at the back there. And that works, because there's those couple of Chinese stones right in front of it. Difficult for Korea to use that Chinese stone, so just found a decent spot.
알았어.
And that's better from Korea. Second thrower, Jung Sung-hoon. That red that he threw, you can see, is just in front of that yellow. And that keeps that red a little bit safer. It's harder to remove that red from play without it catching on the yellow and maybe hanging around. So that not only removed one of the Chinese stones, but rolled to a good spot as well. Yeon Jo holding on to the wheels of Zhang Mingliang for stability and balance. Make sure he doesn't slip when he's delivering. And that's not quite what they wanted. They wanted to remove that Korean guard from play, but also roll away themselves. From Korea perspective, it doesn't matter what color the guard is. Important is the position.
노말.
Korea not yet trying to use that corner guard, it looks like. It's like they're still focused on dealing with the problem of the Chinese stones towards the centre of the sheet instead.
웨이트 좀 있어야 되겠다.
Same thing for Jung Sung-hun, his teammate Jang Jae-hyuk, holding onto the wheels for stability.
굿.
Oh, that was nearly an absolute peach of a shot. He removed that Chinese stone behind the Korean stone. This is nearly perfect, so the Chinese stone squirts out. He just wanted that Korean stone rolling to our right. He just wanted that to hang on, and Korea would have been lying 2 stones in the house. Some of the wheelchair teams just sometimes overthrowing the stones. Sometimes they don't need a big weight. Really accurate stuff there from second thrower Zhang Wenliang.
Oh.
Oh, apologies, that was first stone from Chen Yanxin.
나도 그게 나을 것 같아.
하우스에서
And again, we can see
저건 다 보이는데.
there are 2 Chinese stones far apart from each other. There's one just towards the back of the rings,
좀 더 잡아야 돼. 신남아
and
조금
there's
더
one
잡아야 돼.
right at the front, and that's a good angle there. Again, China, they don't necessarily expect or need to score any points with those 2 yellows, but what those 2 yellows are doing is keeping that pressure on Korea. Korea have to do something about those yellows. Either they have to try to remove them both, or they have to try to get a red stone better. And that's exactly China's objective here in the second end. Is same as the first end. They just want to keep that pressure on Korea. And if you have a couple of Chinese stones lying around the outside, that really forces Korea to outdraw you or try to make a difficult double takeout. And that's found a decent spot for Korea. First stone in the second end for Jang Jae-hyuk. That's a dangerous stone for
저는
Korea.
한 3분 정도 남았고.
It's just at the front, but it's in a handy place that you could just punch that red back a little bit. That's exactly what China's recognising.
拿这儿啊，把我两个挤出就行，打小点呗。对。
You could push that little red stone back just a little bit, and you can see that it would be nice and close to the centre.
不好的是外边啊。放心。
And behind other stones, and China realising that and just wanted to remove that danger. A little bit of a speed wobble, it sounded like, on Chen Yanxin's stone there, and indeed he didn't quite find the right angle on that one. And maybe now Korea, they will have a chance to promote that red, punch it back a little bit.
1번 정도는 만들어 놔야. 아니야. 다 보이는데 왜 이렇게.
他成9秒了呢。8秒8，你的蝴蝶。
Chen Yanxin, yeah, a little bit frustrated with that one.
그런 거 들어해야지. 하우스에 여기가 없어.
얘 진짜 친다고?
정하는 거는 쟤야.
들어해야 돼. 하우스에 여기 많아야 돼.
들어해요? 얘들 좀 더 줄까? 더 줘야 되겠나?
네, 13초.
Korea with the last stone in the second
3초,
end.
2, 3 괜찮아요.
They would love to grab a couple of points back immediately after losing 2 in that first end.
웨이트.
So this is an important shot here. If they got that mistake from China, I think China were hoping to remove that Korean stone, and instead they removed the guard. So this is an important opportunity. And that stone is going to come to a halt. And that's found a decent spot. That red looks like, from our angle, looks like it's tucked in behind those 2 stones at the front of the house. Those 2 stones half in, half out. And that stone just played by Jang Jae-hyuk. That's the stone currently closest to the middle. We say that's the shot. So that now giving China more of a problem. This is better stuff from Korea. Don't let China dictate the play, then Korea needs to start putting a bit of pressure on China as well. This is the fourth game for both teams. We have a round robin with 11 teams, so everybody plays everyone else, so each team will end up having played 10 games in the round robin. And typically a win-loss record of 6-4. That would be typically enough to qualify you for semi-finals.
Yeah.
Huge throw from Chinese skip Wang Haitao. Oh dear. That was a bit of an oopsie. We could see that the running stone accidentally caught the stick of vice skip Chen Yanxin. Let's watch this carefully. You see it catches his chair, in fact, yes. As you might be able to imagine, it's a little bit harder to stay out of the way when stones are flying everywhere if you're a wheelchair user. But it looks like the teams agreed that the only thing that was going to happen was that stone was on its way out anyway. So no harm done.
아니 여기서 불러줘야지 올 수 있어. 아니 휠체어에 쳐가지고 우리께 나갔다고요.
So after a little bit of excitement.
어디 있었어? 하얀데 묻혀 있었지.
Yeah, I think that Korean stone was not going to be knocked out. That's the difficulty. So
아니 하얀데 묻어 있었는데.
the rule is the non-offending team, so it's Korea, that they were not throwing there. They get to put the stone back where they believe that it was.
스톤이 이쪽으로 조금 더 가야 될 것 같은데 넘어왔어. 이쪽으로 살짝 더 가야 돼.
So it's just an accident. There's not really a penalty for that.
스톤이 이쪽으로 조금 더 가야 돼.
And they're asking the players down the other end.
더.
Does this look the same to you? What about now?
됐어.
What about now?
조금 더 가야 되는데.
Once Korea is happy that that's where the stone was supposed to be,
찢는 게 나을 것 같은데.
앞쪽이
then
좋아.
we just play on. So this happens from time to time, even in non-wheelie curling. Sometimes there's just a few stones flying in different directions and people get themselves in the way. And you simply replace the stones where you believe they would have ended up. So yeah, the Chinese stone was on its way out anyway, and it would not have touched the Korean stone. And that's why we're put that Korean stone back and carry on.
뒤에 거 안 쳐. 우리 묻어 있는데.
뒤에 게 지금 2번이란 말이야.
그래.
2점이지. 3점이 지금 돼 있잖아.
지금 쳐야지 3점인데 왜 안 쳐? 이거를?
치고 해야지
We play
3점짜리잖아.
8 ends in wheelchair curling,
왜 안 쳐?
and we have 38 minutes thinking time, so that's actually the same thinking time as for a 10-end game for
마지막 대회도 되는데 다
Men's and
보이는데.
ladies.
2번이니까 쳐야지.
2번이잖아.
당연히 쳐야지 그건.
아니 마지막 대 쳐도 되는데.
마지막에 안 되지. 상대가 2번 해놓으면 2, 3번이 2점밖에 안 되는데.
왜 마지막이에요?
자, 한번 잘해봐라.
화이팅 화이팅.
that little situation in the stone before where the stone hit the chair of Chen Yanxin. That's exactly why. It's just simply more awkward and takes a little bit more time to maneuver yourself around all those stones if you're a wheelchair user. So that's why we have a little bit extra time to manage a game in the wheelchair curling discipline. So 3 stones to come, including this one. Korea with last stone in the second end.
굿샷. 오케이.
And that is a nice stone from the Korean skip, Go Seong Nam. It looked like the vice skip, Baek Haejin. She wasn't sure, I think, if that was the right shot. And it's one of those things that as long as you're making your shots, then pretty much all tactics are good tactics. But there are higher risk shots, certainly. But this is looking good for Korea now, making better use of last stone. They've given themselves a nice chance here. They're allowing 3 Korean stones And it would be a mighty shot if Wang Haitao can remove all three with this one throw. And that was the idea behind Korea's throw there, was to get a third Korean counter into play and put that pressure back on China. So this is better stuff from Korea. They've managed to switch that pressure around here in the second end. Last stone for China, one more to come for Korea. And you could hear them roaring the stone there, trying to encourage it to stay a bit straighter. But it just overcurled a little bit. He needed to hit the red stone first to try to remove
13초.
at least one, if not two Korean stones, but just overcurled slightly and caught his own Chinese stone first. And wow, what an opportunity now for Korea. What a reply to that steal of two against them in the first end.
웨이트만.
But golly, they pulled themselves together immediately.
Wait. Wait.
And now
2초이야. 알았지?
this shot.
짧게 잡아.
아니야, 셀 수도 있어.
Is that going to stop in time?
세.
Oh, that's just going to go through, but that's still a big score of 3 for Korea here in the second end.
이쪽으로 해놨잖아.
Great response from them.
이쪽으로 던져.
그래서 6점.
第一颗壶你可以先跟他一个，你先往。
A little bit of a let off for China
你
there.
先跟他一个，那个角度你打
Korea
左打右，其实
A bit
效果
unlucky with their last stone, just running a little bit high
이렇게 정도로 밀어야겠어.
and going through the house.
밀면 무조건 세면은
Their confirmation of super reply from Korea, scoring 3, and that means our score after the second end is Korea leading China 3 shots to 2. Here's our game summary. China a little bit higher on the accuracy points just now. It's still very early days, and a couple of critical shots made by Korea and 1 or 2 critical shots missed by China. That opened the door for Korea to score a big 3, but a bit of a let off for China. It was just missed making 4 points there. And at this level, every point is really important, and that's quite a big difference between a score of 3 points to 2 versus 4-2.
초
So a
지났어요?
little sigh of relief maybe for China there.
뭐 이제 했다. 아,
And it will be Korea who start us off in the third end.
웨이트만.
Big.
너무 약했나 보다.
Haejin
뭐야?
for Korea. Oh, this one's... Has it got enough beans to get over the line? Oh, I'm not sure it does. That big, thick
왜 그러지?
red line, the horizontal one, that's called the hog line.
아, 그럼 스톤이
There's a
안
hog
나와?
line at both ends.
그냥
And
약했어,
you
약했어.
have to release the stone when you're throwing it before the hog line at the throwing end. And the stone has to get over the hog line at the other end to be in play. So that one just running out of beans. It can be difficult to throw a stone that is light enough or short enough to not go in the rings because you want to protect in the free guard zone. But nevertheless, you want the stone heavy enough or long enough to definitely get over that line. So not easy.
没问题，没问题。来了，老弟儿，13秒吧。行。好。那我给弄了个小插曲。
We've seen some nice stuff already from Yeonjo, and she continues that nice form. Finding the house, finding the rings. It is China who now have last stone. So they may have wanted that stone a little bit shorter. The difference, of course, if that stone was outside of the rings, it would be protected by free guard zone. Whereas in the rings, Korea can go ahead and remove it. Look at that. That's over curled for Kaijin. That could make life a little bit more difficult for Korea there. If you play lead at your club, maybe if you're new to the club, or if you play lead, don't for a minute think it's because you're not very good. We've just seen how important lead stones are, the first player. The last despairing cry from Yeonjo, but that stone just slipping through. But yeah, we can see how important those lead stones are. If you get two really nice stones in play with your first two stones, then you're setting up your team really nicely. Or conversely, if you don't get your first two stones in the right positions, life is so much harder for your team. So it's just about possible to win the game from lead position if you're constantly putting good stones in play with those first two shots. The rest of the team is really just following your lead. So if you're at the club and you're playing lead stones, don't think that's less important than the other positions. It certainly isn't. It's not your worst player who plays lead, it's the person who can position the stones consistently time after time. So a couple of loose shots from both teams. But now, as you were,
한 턴으로 할게요.
no stones in the house.
뭐야? 들어?
가드.
가드.
한국 7번인데 너무
Now,
짧게
it could
잡고
be
있나?
that China are playing conservative tactics in this third end. It could be that China would love to have a blank end. That means no score at all. And let's see what they're thinking, and we'll come back to talking about blank ends.
웨이트만.
Korea, though,
못 올
they
거예요.
want the reverse. Whatever tactic your opposition is aiming for, you are normally your tactics are to not let them do that. But indeed, China playing quite defensively in this third end. And Wang Haitao, he and the man in your picture, Chen Yanxin, they've won this event before. They and two different players in the Chinese team. They won the gold medal against another big hitter in wheelchair curling, Norway. And they will not make too many tactical mistakes, the pair of them. Korea, they also have a strong pedigree in wheelchair curling. They actually finished first in the round robin at their home games in Pyeongchang last time. It was a different team than the team in our, that we're watching today. But the Korean team, they finished first in the round robin, but heartbreakingly ended up fourth overall. They lost in the bronze medal game to Canada. But Korea has won a silver medal in 2010. And they also qualified in 2014, where they placed 9th. So plenty of pedigree in Korean curling as well, here at Paralympic Winter Games. And also good consistency at the World Wheelchair Curling Championships. That's a yearly event. And again, slightly different team. They won a bronze medal in 2019.
3秒5，可以呀。Go go go！ 行。
Oh, that's a nice stone there from Chen Yanxin.
掉的挺大啊。
这球有转，我推那个6号推不出转。
对你那玩意儿太难推了，你别用那个。
And they're further away from the center of the ice, typically.
Normal.
The more difficult it can be to hit a stone. And that's why that's a nice stone from China, and then you can't quite see it because Go Seong Nam is blocking it slightly, but there is another Chinese stone behind that. And you never know if Korea catches this at the wrong angle. He might jam it back onto that other Chinese stone. Oh, it was exactly there, but again, this is normal in curling. Sometimes, yeah, stones start going in all directions. It's unavoidable that a stone accidentally hits another stone, and we just put it back. It's not a big deal. But then a nice shot from Korea, removing that difficult Chinese stone right on the wings, as we call it. That's towards the edge of the sheet, and rolling all the way over to the other side.
Yeah. Whoa! Whoa!
No trouble for Chen Yanxin.
7秒80。
Since they won gold in last time Paralympics in 2018, this Chinese team, they have really gone from strength to strength. They have won the World Wheelchair Championships twice, in 2019 and in 2021. And in between in 2020, that was just before COVID times, if we can all remember back that far. And we just managed to play the World Wheelchair Curling Championships before the world changed forever. And China actually finished first in the round robin there in the World Championship 2020, but were knocked out in the semi-final. But definitely this Chinese team really on top of their game this whole Olympic cycle. Whereas it's the first Paralympic representation for the Korean team, although they also played in the most recent World Championship in 2021, where they finished 9th.
3秒。
Which is actually an excellent debut. There are 12 teams in the A group of the World Wheelchair Championships, and the other teams are in a B group, the bottom 3 in the A group, so teams placing 10, 11 and 12. They go to the B group for the next year, so there's then a qualifying competition in the B group to play in the A. So to finish 9th and maintain your position in the A group at the first time at the World Championships for this Korean team, that's a big achievement. And they already have their first win at Paralympic Winter Games.
多少秒？12秒5，摆着地还能65。
12秒8。
行。
So definitely China could be the favourites on paper for this game. They've certainly got the more experience. But as we saw there in that second end, this Korean team not intimidated.
자, 화이팅, 화이팅.
We've seen the Korean team quite happy to play aggressively as well, but this is the right choice at this stage in the game. It's China who have last stone in this third end. So it makes sense to simply just remove that Chinese stone. And that red is just hanging on. If any part of the stone is touching the rings, that's counted. And the presence of any Korean stone in the rings that just gives that little bit of added pressure to China. So let's see if China want to play very conservatively.
More
aggressively. Crowd, home crowd, happy with that one. That's a score of 1 yellow to China in the third end. And that levels the score after 3 ends in our featured game between Korea and China. Both teams have 3 shots.
내가 더 넓혀줄까? 그랬더니 자기가 맞춰보겠대.
Here's the overall game summary. You can see China still out shooting Korea, but not quite getting the advantage for it yet. China would have been quite happy to blank that end, and we'll come back to talk about that shortly. But for the time being, after 3 ends, the score Korea versus China, it's 3 shots each. We're in the 4th end of this round-robin encounter between our 2 teams from the Asia-Pacific region. That's Korea and China.
没问题，没问题，没问题，来了个13秒3，好的，好，可以啊。
And Yeonjo continuing her super form. She could not have placed that much better.
컬이 없어가지고.
We're in the 4th end of an 8-end game. So after this end, we shall have a half-time pause.
이번엔 컬이 좀 있는데? 떨어진다. 더. 그렇지.
And this time it's Korea who are going for the very conservative tactics.
많이 잡아야 되긴 하네.
몇 초예요?
In the 3rd end, we saw China playing fairly conservatively. They were quite happy to remove stones, keep everything clear. And that goes back to Tactics 101. The stone's got a bit of curling to do. Has she got enough of it? She certainly has. Good work again from Yeonjo. Sometimes you will see a team playing for a blank end, and that means the team is deliberately trying to score 0.
우리 훈대.
And it looked like China were
우린 정글 게임 가자고 그랬잖아.
keen to do that potentially in the 3rd end.
우리 후라고.
어?
후라고.
뭐라고?
후공이라고.
후공이니까 사이드 가드 해야지.
해요?
Now, the reason why teams sometimes, on purpose, want to score nothing is if you imagine this 4th end, which has also started fairly conservatively. Korea put a stone in the house. China knocked it out. Sorry, China put a stone in the house. Korea knocked it out. China put a stone in the house. And then I think Korea want to punch it through, but is the stone over curling a bit? Or maybe they didn't, but no, they definitely were not trying to punch that through. But you can imagine if we would just keep on putting a stone in the house, punching it through, putting a stone in the house,
最好贴一下。
pushing it through.
好，
If we do that for 8 stones, then Korea can only ever score 1 point at the end. And we can think of that a little bit like the default. If you have last stone, then you have 1 chance with your 1 last stone to score 1 point.
来了。
And at this level, where we won't see too many mistakes, then we can understand that scoring 1 point with 1 last stone,
没问题，没问题。
that should be fairly straightforward. China have really got nice weight today. We're really finding that T-line, that horizontal line through the circles. Just cancelling out that Korean guard, using it first so that Korea doesn't have as much space to move around there.
서는 게
오빠 저거
좋은데.
2초 반이에요?
But tactically,
저 2초 반이었다고?
if you imagine a very conservative end where 1 stone goes in, the other team knocks it out, then your team knocked them out, etc., then you would only score 1 point every time you had last stone, and last stone would then transfer to the other team. Now, if you do that for 8 ends,
아 너무 센 거야?
you will end up with a score of 4 each.
아 너무
So,
세다.
if you want to win the game, you need to do more than scoring only 1 when you've got last stone. And that's why sometimes,
좋아.
for example, in the situation where China was in the 3rd end,
샷.
they may have been deliberately trying to score
네, 굿샷.
nothing to have a blank end so that they could keep last stone instead for the 4th end.
지금 얼음이 죽었는지 사이드
So instead of
쪽으로
just easily scoring 1 point with their last stone in that 3rd end, which as we saw they did,
8秒5就行，8秒。
that's a straightforward shot for players of this quality. Instead of scoring that easy 1,
不大，崩飞也行。
sometimes you'll see teams opting to score 0
8秒也行。
and have another go at scoring 2 or more points instead in the next end. So especially at this level, the blank end, quite important tactics-wise. Less important at the club level, but at this level, quite an important tactic.
来过来呀。
Ooh, that just sneaked around the guard, but he didn't want it to sneak around the guard by that much,
这壶啊，
or curl around the guard rather by that
壶
much.
不加收了，真是不长进。
And he accidentally removed his own stone, so that was really nice there from Korea. You can see it's over curled. It's curled past already the Korean stone, and that Korean stone is still safely in behind cover. Nice opportunity here for Korea. It is they who have last stone in the 4th end. So remember, with 1 last stone, it's relatively straightforward to score 1 point.
왼쪽 좀 있어야겠다.
And Korea, with last stone in this 4th end, they would love to score 2 or more points. And that's a lovely stone from second thrower Jung Sung-hun. And Korea now lie 2.
拽壶吗？拽吧，拽点吧，拽吧。正常。8秒。好嘞。
加油！
Chen Yan seen in Olympic form out there.
这个
哇！稍这边来点吧。行。
8秒啊。
And that's fine enough, removing 1 of the Korean stones, and importantly, leaves his own Chinese stone hanging around.
많이 보이고 어렵다. 다
The other
보이죠?
important thing in our Tactics 101 is,
아까 이쪽으로
not only do you need to score more than 1 with last stone,
많이 잡아줘.
at least sometimes, if you want to win the game, you will not score more than 1 unless you get a mistake from your opposition.
더 잡아야
So
될 것 같은데.
if your opposition
너무
play
많아.
all
너무
8 of their
많아.
stones
잡아야 돼.
perfectly, then they are going to prevent you scoring 2 points. Therefore, you will only ever be able to score 1. So
범퍼를 할까?
to win the game, you do need to score more than 1 point, at least sometimes
둘
when you have
반이에요
last stone.
이거.
뭐라고?
But in order to do that, you need a mistake from your opposition, and that's what you're always trying to do. You're trying to set up difficult situations to try to tempt your opposition into making a mistake.
굿샷.
좋아요. 굿샷.
Ooh, that was close, but
많이 떨어져
made it
이쪽에.
nicely in the end there. Jang
到这边
Jae-hyuk
甩，好的。
and Korea again lying 2 stones. So Korea nicely set up here in this fourth end. A big score of 2 here just before half-time. That would be a real confidence boost for Korea going into the half-time pause.
行。
와우.
甩，行。
1秒8.
Big throw from Chen Yanxin. They may have been hoping to either roll in the other direction to take the play completely away from
또
that side of the rink and potentially Korea being able to roll
더
behind the guard.
잡아야지.
Or they may have been trying to roll behind the guard themselves. And as it is,
센터 잡아야 될 것 같은데.
네.
that Chinese stone is wide open. No guards, nothing around it.
아 라인 좋은데.
And Korea just
웨이트 좀
need,
있어야겠다.
if Korea just keep on doing this,
에이,
then they're in a good
떨어져.
position to try to score 2 points here. And I can only apologise, Korean fans, that I seem to have cursed that stone by mentioning that.
자, 走。有点腹部，
It was important really that that Korean stone just
还
thrown
后
by
边老一点。
Jang
아니
Jae-hyuk.
그거는
딱 초반이야.
It was
사이드.
important really that that stone would hang around after he threw it as well. But as you can see from this nice angle, that Korean stone slap bang behind the guard. Very difficult for China to remove it.
说放一点。
We may not see China trying to remove it. That could be too difficult. Therefore, the other way to neutralise that stone is to just throw one better than it.
자, 와,
Oh my goodness, that wasn't too difficult at all for Wang Haitao to remove. Looks like he's in winning mood out there as well. That was a great shot from him.
둘만 셋.
Definitely worth a fist bump. That was super.
가자. 화이팅 화이팅.
Still 2 stones to come from Korea, just 1 for China. And if Korea do want to try to score 2 points with their last stone, or having last stone advantage in this fourth end, this will need to be really good stuff from Go Seong-nam.
웨이트 죽었어.
화이팅.
So it looks like he's struggling a bit more with draws today. Very accurate with the takeout when he's removing stones. Not quite found his rhythm with a draw, so a draw is a stone that will land in the house, in the rings.
웨이트 많다.
And this one's coming in chunky as well.
몇 초예요 형님 이거?
We need a patch of Velcro out there on the ice. That's going to go straight through.
많이 썼네.
And yeah, Korea now only 1 stone left, so they will not be able to score 2 points in this end.
나 저거.
And that's not the end of the world, but as we said, if you're going to win the game, you have to score more than 1 point with last stone, at least sometimes. So not quite taking their chances in this fourth end to score 2. And that's okay, but certainly in the second half, well, both teams will be eager to start putting on a couple of points.
啊，手大一点啊。
好，
力量
你 OK？
来了，二呀！
可以。
Go go go！ 没问题，没问题，再来一个，没问题。盖！
二，
OK OK。
二，好球！
China, they've really got the best of Korea at the moment in terms of draw weight. So that's a draw weight, a stone that will land in the house. It's got enough travelling to land in the house, and that's also a nice tee weight. You see it stopped real close to the tee line there. And again, China, they don't really expect to score a point with that yellow stone, but what that yellow stone is doing, that's putting pressure on this shot from Go Seong-nam. He has to make a nice shot here, or it would be 1 point to China, and that's the objective for China there. And they saw his first stone went through the back. It was going too quickly. And oh gosh, this one's could do with settling down. Is it going to hang on? And it isn't.
Yeah.
So that pressure from China, it worked. And that is a steal of 1 point to China in the fourth end, going into half-time. So the local crowd enjoying that one. And after 4 ends then, a steal of 1 to China, scoring without last stone in the fourth end, and that means China lead Korea 4 shots to 3. There's our local crowd enjoying watching the home team. There's our overall summary for the team from Korea. So numbers not too bad. They could do with being a little bit tighter at first and fourth position.
조금씩 더 잡으라고.
And that's maybe costing them just now. Let's see what their coach has to say.
타이트해가지고.
그리고 지금 조금 맨 처음 우리가 첫 번째, 두 번째 게임 때 그 샷이 나오는 것 같은데 조금 더 뒤로 가서 릴렉스하게 던지라고 쭉 던져. 제 뒤에 있는 거 봐봐. 천천히 던진다고.
1엔드, 4엔드 똑같아요. 우리가 가드 세워놓고 우리가 마지막 샷이 안 되니까 스틸 당하면 다 똑같아. 어려운 샷도 아니야. 오픈 스테이, 오픈 드로우.
네, 그게 안 돼요.
And there's the numbers for the team from China. You can see in particular Chen Yanxin at third position, having a super game, playing at 94% accuracy. And indeed China just out shooting Korea just now. Let's see what their coach has to say at half-time.
还是要交流场地的这个变化，因为现在滑度挺好的。
这边谁试的？现在你看我打那，这边打倒没太，他出手大，但出手是打，但也没下。这边打没下，这边打有下。
这场地有点黏了，我看那转儿到最后都没有了，就走转儿。
吃转儿然后最后那个，对你现在其实可能场地滑度还是在这个13秒以内。
There's our overall game summary. The score not quite reflecting what we're seeing. China definitely out shooting Korea and just starting to maybe find and get the advantage for that, get a little bit reward for that. Stealing an important point there in the fourth end for China. And they will be looking to put their foot down a bit and try to start putting a little bit of distance now between them and Korea in the second half of this game. Our local fans, I'm sure, enjoying watching their Chinese team as much as we are. Always a fun team to watch. Always very animated, cheering the stone, roaring the stone down the ice.
아니 그냥 아예 내가 뒤로 가는 게 나을 것 같아.
그게 아니라
그러니까 내가 그냥 아예 내가 뒤로 빡 빠는 게 나을 것 같아.
진짜 해볼만 하잖아.
맞아.
솔직히
전국 게임 잘 가면 돼.
而且是打的也没么积极有。
他就觉得他自己挡住了，然后他自己觉得有小插曲了。他得
完了你，
我帮他调节调节。对，我帮他调节。
大家千万别再去想。
行，我帮他调节一下。
看你了啊。两个没进人了。
就当那没头上毛呗。
아닌 것 같으면 그냥 이렇게 하는데 아까 팀 같은 경우에는
Energy, maybe a little bit more positive feeling in the China camp.
마이크 차고 있는데 그거 다 들린다. 아니야. 수공인데 왜? 아니야.
Sadly, I don't understand Korean, but it seems like maybe the skip, Go Seong Nam, and vice skip Baek Haijin, maybe not always agreeing on what strategy they're following just now. But score's still very tight. Going into the second half, into the fifth end of this 8-end game, it is China leading Korea 4-3. Yeonjo from China couldn't get us going in the fifth end after the halftime break. China leading Korea 4-3. And as we often see, actually, just after you have the halftime break, the first couple of stones, once you come back on the ice, you do see that rather often, or unfortunately often, shall we say, that the first few stones are rather overthrown after the interval. So Korea hanging on to this game a little bit more by luck than design at the moment. They're not quite got the consistency that China has. But that's another good start from Baek Haijin. Remember, that red stone now from Korea is in the free guard zone, that white area, all of that white space in front of the rings. Free guard zone is protected until we've thrown 5 stones. And Yeonjo, our number's a little bit lower, but I don't feel like we're noticing that here from our perspective, that she's setting up China pretty nicely in these ends. She would have wanted that just a little further in, though, I think.
웨이트만.
Baek Haijin, her number is also a little bit lower than her tournament average. And neither team really using that free guard zone or using their lead stones to put pressure on the other team. But that's 2 really nice stones from Korea there. And that's what they need if they want to start marching China. Can maybe get ahead again in this game. First stone of the second half for Zhang Minliang. Smash is up for China. The tactics will now be the opposite in this fifth end of what we were watching in the fourth.
쳐야죠.
범퍼.
보이는데.
It's Korea who now have the last stone in this fifth end, and it is China who will be wanting to frustrate them. Indeed, that yellow just thrown by China, that will already put a little bit of pressure on Korea. But this man responding very well to the pressure. Jung Sung-hun.
오, 잘 난다.
좋네요.
앞에서 맞아도 돼.
He's made it round the guard by nothing at all and just pops that Chinese stone through. That's nice work from him.
하나. 저거 봐.
Could be though that those nice corner guards from Korea, they may not have a chance to use those though. That's good from Zhang Menliang.
稍大一点。几秒？
And yeah, Korea really need to now use those corner guards that they set up at the beginning of the end. We do see that sometimes. We see teams putting up corner guards. In all disciplines of curling, you see teams putting up corner guards and then they get sucked into playing either towards the centre or towards the opposition stone and end up never using the corner guards that they carefully played with their first stones. So this is exactly what Korea have to do.
아, 너무 세다.
룸이야.
웨이트만.
Yeah, I think that stone's running in hot. It's just going to sail through.
Sorry.
이거는 말로 못 해주겠다.
As we mentioned, the level of difficulty for any shot in wheelchair curling is higher. The degree of difficulty is higher for all shots in wheelchair curling versus the same shot in non-wheelchair curling. Firstly, and most obviously, it's because there's no one sweeping. We're used to, at this point, seeing a couple of sweepers coming along with the stone. But wheelchair game doesn't have any sweepers. And yet still, you have to manage to play really nice stones like that. Curling nicely around the guard. Another good shot for Chen Yanxin. He's kind of winning the game all by himself at the moment. But there are another couple of key differences between wheelchair curling and non.
오빠 6번이 떨어져요, 근데.
And let's watch this delivery from Jang Jae-hyuk. We'll see colleague, teammate Jung Sung-hun. He will hold on to the wheels. Jang Jae-hyuk for stability and balance. Make sure he doesn't slip while he's throwing. And you can see there are two other key differences in wheelchair curling. And the first is that all of your power for the shot, it comes from upper body strength. Whereas in non-wheelchair curling, all of the power is, or at least should be, coming from the leg drive. So in non-wheelchair curling, we start in the hack. That's the little black rubber grippy part at the back. They're not needed in wheelchair curling, so we don't see them here. We start from the grippy rubber hack, and then all of the power for the throw comes from that leg drive, whereas for the wheelchair players, all of their power has to come from upper body. And that also makes it a bit tougher, particularly if you're throwing a lot of hard shots like take out to remove other stones. You need a lot of power for that, and that's tricky to do with leg drive, and it is even harder to do with upper body strength only. Not quite removing that Korean stone, but has it done enough?
들어해야 돼요.
들어. 이게 2번.
아니요, 저 계속 쌓아놔야 돼요.
좀만 줄여줄래?
조금만 줄여줘. 13초.
화이팅.
It's Korea who have last stone again in this fifth end, with China stealing a point in that fourth. And the curling gods are not going to give them just too many chances. They need to start taking their chances when they're getting
괜찮은 것 같아요.
a mistake or a miss,
가는 게 앞에 것만
or even a half shot from China.
아, 좀 약하네.
And that's not it. That shot was better short than long, so that's still a red stone that Korea can use out front there. But we're not quite really consolidating their chances at the moment, Korea, and they're going to start running out of ends to do so. They're only one behind. But you get the feeling in this game that China are starting to hit next gear up. First stone in the fifth end for Wang Haitao. He's reconsidering something. You can see he has that little pole in front with a handle for his balance, for his non-throwing arm. He's a left-hander, but it's the stone that starts in the middle of the ice, so it doesn't matter if you're right or left-handed. And you can see that lovely smooth throw that we see from Wang Haitao. This is a cracker. What a shot from Wang Haitao. The local crowd really appreciating that one.
얼마나 보여요?
That is a cracker. And that achieves without sweeping. And also,
한 40 보인다.
the third key difference between the wheelchair and non is, as we've seen, the wheelchair curlers, they use the stick for delivery. Back in the day when wheelchair curling was just beginning, then you had some folks who would just lean their arm over the wheel and throw the stone by hand, as in traditional, but technology always improving, and now all the players will throw with the stick.
이게 40이라고?
휠체어는 써도 돼.
Well, that makes quite a difference to the throwing compared with non-wheelchair. So you have that one smooth movement, pushing the
40이 안
stone.
보여. 뺐는데 40이 아니야.
그럼 이걸로 하자.
11초. 빼서.
With stick delivery, you have one push, all in one smooth push movement. You're releasing the stone and you can't adjust it. Whereas in non-wheelchair, when you're using the leg drive, you're pushing out from the hack using your legs, and then if you push out a little bit too strong or a little bit not strong enough, you still have 2 or 3 seconds before you have to release the stone, and you can try to do something about it. So best is if you push out correctly in the first place, but sometimes you're either maybe a bit off target, or perhaps you need a bit of extra push or take a little bit off. And that's all possible if you're using leg drive from the hack, but that's not possible if you're using stick delivery. And that's the third key difference that makes all of these shots in wheelchair curling just that higher degree of difficulty than non-wheelchair equivalent. But of course, this is going very nicely for Go Seong Nam. That's a pretty good effort. I don't think he could have done much better than that. That Chinese stone was really nicely placed. And the Chinese stone was already at that nice angle. So not really possible for Korea to remove that Chinese stone. It was always just going to go straight back onto the other Chinese stone. And that's why that was such a nice first throw from Wang Haitao. But he needs to be careful. He doesn't want to do that same thing now that he just saw from Korea. He doesn't want to catch the wrong angle on this Korean stone and send it straight back onto the Chinese stone. So again, this is a difficult stone if you do have someone sweeping. And if you are delivering from the hack rather than stick delivery. This is quite a challenging stone already. So that little bit more challenging for in the wheelchair game.
Whoa.
Last stone of the fifth end for China. And this is a big weight, and he has done exactly the same. That was a lot of weight for that stone. He was maybe nervous of dropping the weight, playing it a little bit slower, and then he was maybe nervous it would curl too much and hit that red guard that we can just see just in front of those stones he was going for. So the heavier the stone, the faster it's going, the less it will curl. And perhaps he was cautious of throwing less weight just in case it curled too much, but that big heavy stone ended up not curling enough. The Korean stone did catch the Chinese stone at the back, stayed around, and now Korea have big chance to score 2 points here. And as the numbers are showing us, even though China are really out shooting Korea, Korea are hanging on to this game somehow. So that's a big mistake for Korea. They are not going to get good chances like that very often in this game, and you need to start putting those away. There was a lot of space for that shot, and that will be frustrating for Korea. They could have gone 5-4 ahead, but as it is, 1 point for Korea, making the score between Korea and China 4 shots each after 5.
내가 들어오고 감을 못 잡거든요.
There's the overall summary. Again, as we can see, the numbers not quite matching what we're seeing in the score. China really out-shooting Korea, but Korea hanging on to this game, scoring 1 point in that fifth end. And the score is now 4 shots each. We're in the sixth end then of this all Asia-Pacific encounter. That's the only two teams from the Asia-Pacific region who are representing here at Paralympic Winter Games. That's Korea and China. These teams will know each other pretty well from Asia-Pacific competitions. And that's another positive start from Baek Haejin in Team Korea. Scores are level, 4 shots each. It is China who now have last stone in the sixth end.
Kalina. 行。我。
不行了，没下线。
没问题，没问题，别着急，下来，别着急。我2。
Just encouraging that stone to put its brakes on, settle down. Ooh, I wonder if that stone's still hanging on. Korea having a good look at it. As we said, if any part of that stone is touching the rings, that stone is counted as in. It looks like Korea think that stone is in play.
웨이트만.
Not my mistake there, just ignoring that stone for now and concentrating on playing towards the centre.
4.3.
And super shot placement from Baek Haejin. 2 perfect centre guards there.
上吧，力量。
Ooh, what do you think here? I think maybe the shadow of that stone is touching the rings there. But if needed, then the umpire can come with it's called a 6-foot measure. And it's a 6-foot long pole. And if the pole touches the stone, it's in. And if the pole doesn't touch the stone, it's out. Very simple. There are 2 measures, that's one of them. And the other one is for deciding between 2 different stones.
12秒6。
留着。
Well, that stone's definitely in. That's hanging on there for
太恶心了这种。
Yeonjo.
센터가 두개 너무 좋은데.
This might look like a strange strategy if you're from China. If you're a China fan, you might wonder what the yellows are doing over there on the side of the sheet. Is it not a more clever idea to play them towards the centre? And at the conclusion of the end, you would be right, viewer. At the moment, what China is doing, they would rather keep the play away from the centre. Their ideal situation is when they come to play last stone, they would rather have some space in the centre for a nice, easy last stone. So they're trying to set up another stone away from the centre, drag play away from the centre. They would love to keep Korea also away from the centre. But no such luck, because Korea have played another really nice stone towards the centre there. However, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stones in play. That means free guard zone is over. That area out front no longer protected, and China can go ahead and start removing these stones. So now you can see those Chinese stones on the right of the sheet as we see it. Those Chinese stones pretty safe over there. Now play is coming back to the centre. And that's really nice stuff from Zhang Mingliang.
头那儿放回头注意点。
8秒。
哦。
And Korea have a decision to make. Did they persist with playing towards the centre, or did they want to remove the Chinese stones instead?
11.
And we like to see this. This is the aggressive call from Korea.
밖에 브러쉬 보세요.
And Jung Sung-hun really been the MVP for Korea so far in this game.
얘도 웨이트만.
Just slowing down now, this stone, but that's found a decent spot. All 3 of those stones in front, all 3 of those, you could just punch them backwards just a little bit, and then you would have stones in the front of the house, so the front rings, and they would be behind cover. So that's the kind of shot at this stage you would say better short than long. So if you need a plan B, then plan B would be to land the stone a little bit shorter, which they did, because then you can still use that stone later. But looks like one of the stones not usable anymore. That's removed by Zhang Mingliang.
아니야, 더 잡아야 돼. 더 잡아야 돼.
But Korea persisting with the aggressive tactics. They're persisting with trying to force play towards the centre. If you think about it, if you're China, you have last stone in the 6th end. Now if Korea have already got a stone close to the centre, maybe behind those 2 Korean guards, that gives China a big problem. So that's why this is good tactics from Korea.
Wait.
We're getting towards the conclusion of this game. We're in the 6th end out of 8.
괜찮을 것 같은데.
좋아. 굿샷. 좀 더 안쪽으로 들어가야 돼 이제. 꺾여야 돼.
Both teams don't have too many ends left
됐어.
either
굿샷.
do something fancy and get a big score, or to lose a big score. That could be disastrous. And that's a very nice effort from Zhang Jiehyuk. You can see he's struggling a little bit to keep up with Chen Yanxin, who's having an outstanding game for China.
9秒，行。
Teammate Yan Zhou, she is holding the wheels for stability so that he doesn't slip.
行，哦，
没问题，没问题，我行。
Well, she's having a super game out there today is Chen Yanxin. And again, that just squeaking around the guard, that's very difficult to do again when you don't have sweepers. And you've just got that one smooth push delivery with the stick delivery. Very difficult shot to make sure you get around the guard, but don't touch it. Korea looking for something similar. Hard work out there for Zhang Jiehyuk, keeping up with the superb shooting of Chen Yanxin on China's side. This looks nice. Is it round the guard? Oh, it's not. And that shows us, again, that shot is difficult in wheelchair curling. If two big boys had been sweeping that, I think that shot would have been just perfect. But it's hard when nobody's sweeping and you can't adjust the stone once it's released. That just shows us really what a very good game Chen Yanxin, the Chinese, is having. That he made that stone just beautifully before. And now Korea having a bit of a headache. It's China who have last stone in the 6th end. They're lying at least 2. The one just next to the stick of Wang Haitao, and there's definitely one more Chinese stone just towards the back of the rings that we can see. And there is a 3rd Chinese stone on the far left of our screen. Not sure if that's in the rings or not. We may yet see that 6-foot measure to check if the stone's in or not. Curling, of course, predates the metric system by several hundred years. Across the world, not only in still somewhat imperial countries like the US or Great Britain, but across the world for convenience, and because we've called it that for hundreds of years, you will still hear curlers talking about the 12-foot circle, that's the blue one, the 8-foot circle is the white one, and the 4-foot circle, the all-important 4-foot, is the red circle. So China are calling their timeout. It's the 6th end. China in a strong position here. They want to make sure they don't fluff that and accidentally make a wrong decision. Let Korea back into this end. So they've called a timeout. That means their coach can come and discuss the situation with them. They have a 1-minute timeout once the coach arrives. And here she is. Let's see what they say.
那我觉得你要么就是，其实我是想让你要么往上做一个，要么就往边上做一个。因为你现在如果说咱旋的就算很好的话，它依然是打甩，你可能下一个你还得面临着旋击，对吧？这就是为什么我们现在不想让你就是说过早的就是往里旋，就是怕人家打甩，这样的话你可能从前面你找你都不好找。
你说你现在
轻，我对就薄轻呗，薄轻把它轻到边上去以后，
轻哪个？往哪边轻？
往那边轻啊，你肯定往那边轻啊。对啊，你薄一点往那边轻。
打贼准不行，打不准就关就溜里边。
你就算软的话，你也是软上面那个。
别舍不得是吧？
对，我觉得就是一点像啊，那你就往这边投，往这边投也行，往这边投，然后让他打甩的话，你再旋，那你就得做好旋打。
要是打甩，要是没有零的话，我把我中。
行，
那你再旋一个。
对，那你就可以这么轻了。
对，
是不是？行，
行，
加油。
行，我找13秒来。这里行，这样关键。
So 1-minute timeout is concluded. That sounded productive. Yeah, the question is not so much what to do. We want to get another Chinese stone counting. But the question is more, how do we avoid accidentally letting Korea get back into this end? How do we put more pressure on Korea? We don't want them to have an easy stone. Maybe there's a double takeout possible, or even a triple takeout possible for Korea. So the question is not really what do we want to do. We know we want to get another Chinese stone into play. The question is more, where do we want to put that to try to make it as hard as possible for Korea to remove?
Yeah.
And the team will have been discussing. Maybe if you speak Chinese, you would be able to recognize this, whereas I can't. But I'm sure the team will have been discussing not only this stone from Chen Yanxin, but they will have been talking about, if we replace a stone here, then Korea has to do this, then we will do this. And let's find a decent spot for Chen Yanxin. They may have wanted that more like front rings. Although actually, I quite like that where it is. It's really only that stone right in the centre that Korea has to work with. And actually, those pesky yellows around the back rings on the outside, not helpful for Korea to play on those. So actually, that has found a good spot there from Chen Yanxin.
롤도 될 수 있고 그래 좀 되면 더블 나오고 내 생각에 인턴이도 나온 거 같은데 봐봐
더블도 나올 수 있고.
누나 일로 할게요.
A little bit indecisive for me today, Korea. They haven't looked as confident as maybe in other games they've been having.
파이팅. 할 수 있어.
And maybe that's just that additional experience from China showing through that, as we said, this is the first Paralympic Winter Games for this constellation from Korea, but a lot of strength and depth in wheelchair curling and non-wheelchair in Korea. But first time for this particular team, and volley. That's not at all what they meant. It looked like he changed his mind when he was already down to throw and wanted to play the clockwise handle instead of the anti-clockwise handle. Maybe was feeling a bit uncomfortable with the clockwise handle, but that didn't look like the obvious handle to play. And indeed, it caught the guard on the way in. So China have a similar conundrum now. The question is not really what do we want to do. We know we want to get an additional Chinese stone in the house. Where do we want to put it so that we make it as hard as possible for Korea to stop us scoring big here in this end? And again, they will have been talking about all three stones left in this end. 2 for China, only 1 now for Korea. And they will have been saying, okay, if we place a stone here, then Korea will try to do this. And then hopefully, with our final stone for China, we will be able to do this and score big points here in the 6th end. And in that way, curling can be thought of as a little bit like chess on ice. So you're always thinking, well, maximum 7 moves ahead per end. But we do see that at this level. Teams are thinking 7 shots ahead. This looks lovely. That's a super shot from Wang Haitao. That's really perfect placement, again, without sweeping and no adjustment possible on that stick delivery. And he's landed it absolutely beautifully. No easy options for Korea.
슈터가 날라서.
여기다 붙여놓는 건 어때?
거기로 프리즈가 살짝 해야
여기는
살짝 톡 치는 것도 괜찮을 것 같아요.
Korea in all kinds of trouble here.
거기도 우리한테 찬스야.
Only 1 stone left.
하면은
China's last stone still to come.
이거 되면은
대박이야.
대박이야.
No easy options, no easy shots out there for them.
파이팅.
You can hear the buzz in the arena, really enjoying watching their home team perform so strongly in this game. Huge shot here for Go Seong-nam. This could be a game changer.
야, 이 너무 세잖아.
He's not having his best game today, poor old Go Seong-nam. The Chinese crowd not really applauding a mistake. It's more that they're happy to see the Chinese team having such a good opportunity here. And 1, 2, 3, 4 Yellowstones already counting. You will never get an easier chance to score 5 points than you have right now. And you can hear the crowd buzzing already. I think if Wang Haitao makes this shot, it could get quite noisy out there. He's just played it. He just wants to play exactly the same again, please. And he has played exactly the same again, please. A huge cheer from our local Chinese crowds. That's a huge score of 5 for China in the 6th end. And it looks like the big man's almost allowing himself a little smile. And indeed, Korea deciding that there's no coming back from that. And they're conceding the game to China after 6 ends. So China had to be patient there. Korea were hanging on, but good shooting, good patience, paying off for China. And you need to keep concentrating in those games where you're playing well. You're out shooting your opposition, but you need to be patient. And success will come, as it did there for China. Fantastic way to finish for them in front of their home crowd. Confirmation there. Big score of 5 in the 6th end. And that makes the final score in our game, China against Korea. China winning by 9 shots to 4. And there, that final shot from China. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Chinese stones delighting the home crowd. The big man finally allowing himself a punch in the air to celebrate. Confirmation then, the final result here in our featured game. China defeating Korea 9 shots to 4. How does that affect the standings? Very nicely for China. That's bumped them up to 2 wins now and 2 losses, so they're nestling very nicely poised in the middle of the table there. Korea, they've got that 1 win. They're now on 1 win and 3 losses, but all the teams still have a chance. And there now the numbers, the game statistics, does now rather match the score that we saw. China were really out shooting Korea most of that game, but not quite able to put their foot down and push it over the line. But they were patient. They just kept doing what they were doing, China. And sometimes you just have to do that. The success will come. And China patient, playing good shots, and finally setting up a massive end in the 6th end and scoring a huge 5 to put the game away and over the line. Happy local fans, delighted with their team. They lost their first 2 games, China, but they're finding their form now. And that's great for the home fans to see their team doing so well. So confirmation there in our featured game. Really nice, strong performers from China. Really coming into form now, the defending gold medalists from last time. They had to be patient. Korea were hanging on to that game, but China consistently outshooting them, just missing a couple of critical shots to take the lead, but being patient and then finally putting together 8 tremendous shots and picking up a huge score of 5 in the 6th end. And Korea deciding there was no coming back from that and conceding the game at that point. So Korea a little bit out of sorts today. They looked perhaps a little bit less confident. The body language, the energy felt a little bit more indecisive, not quite confident out there today, but also struggling a little bit to keep up with the tremendous shot making from China, particularly the back end of China, the 3rd and 4th throwers, both throwing really accurately today, particularly Chen Yanxin. He was throwing at 90%. And China patiently setting up their game and finally getting a win.